I had an awesome group of friends, 8 guys during high school. We had a lot of brilliant ideas over our high school years, and the summer after we graduated, as we were getting ready to go our separate ways to colleges, we had one last epic great idea. Road trip in one vehicle far enough north to see polar bear. It was a smart group of guys. We actually mapped it out. We did our research, and we knew that if we really just drove straight through, and 8 drivers, we could pull this off, we should be able to make it far enough north in Canada to see polar bear and make it back in time for school between family trips and summer jobs, and some people starting pretty early for their school year. We were very grateful to have one of our friends' dads loan us his Suburban. Now, this Suburban was old. I'm not sure how old, but it was very worn out old, even if it didn't have many years. So it took some work to get this thing ready to take a trip. The cigarette lighter, and it was actually a cigarette lighter, did not work, and we needed that for power. So we fixed up the electric components to get that to work. The windows didn't go down, so we repaired those because we figured we wanted some air, because the air conditioning also didn't work. We did not fix that. The radio didn't work, so one of the things that was going to get plugged into the power was a radio, stereo, that we duct taped to the dashboard. Now, we wanted to plug other things in as well, so we did an adapter to a power strip from the cigarette lighter, and into that, in addition to that radio, we plugged in a TV, a VCR, and a Nintendo 64. Because it was going to be a long drive. Being very responsible, we also took along an extra car battery because we knew we were going to totally run that battery out of steam. So did all this, get it fixed up. Even with that, this thing probably shouldn't have been driven across the county, let alone far enough into Canada to see polar bear. So a couple of things that really capture how rough the shape of this thing was partway through our trip, the people in the back seat, 8 of us in a Suburban, this is all the seats are full, back seat realize they're getting wet. Not just wet, muddy wet. We're like, what is going on? We get out and we inspect things. We discover it was the first we had hit wet, muddy roads on that trip, and it turned out the wheel wells were totally rusted out. And so as we were driving, the mud was spraying up through the wheel wells that should have been there, through the vents and into the people in the back seat. Also, as we made our return across the border, we went through a really rural border crossing. So this, just, for anybody who gets nervous, we did make it back. It won't feel that way partway through. But the border crossing agent, there's 8 of us, guys, 18-ish, in a Suburban with a rooftop carrier and a cooler on the back. So this looks suspicious. So he does his walk around. His first question to us is, "Aren't you worried about breaking down?" We said, "We broke down twice." There's more coming here. We broke down twice. We're not really worried about that anymore. And then, building some trust with us, he sticks his head in to look around, and he sees our VHS, TV, VCR, Nintendo 64, and stereo setup, and he says, "Does all that work?" We said, "You bet it does." That was it. He was ready to let us go because that was all very convincing, and he was quite impressed by this group of guys. So the 2 times that we broke down, the first one was 500 miles north of Montreal. We had not stopped other than restroom type stops. We broke down. It was a 2-day ordeal that is a totally different story that I'll save for later. That 2-day ordeal meant we knew we wouldn't make it to see polar bear. So we revised our goals. Again, being an intelligent group, we decided we're not going to make it to the polar bear because we didn't have the time. So our new goals are black bear and moose. I am pleased to tell you we saw both, black bear and a mother moose and her baby. Very cool, right at dusk. But we did break down another time. So after breaking down and getting going again, we decided, well, we're not going to make it far enough north, but we might as well keep going north. Not the brightest move. So we ended up getting in after dark into this park way, way north in Quebec. And we didn't see anybody there. There was no station as we went in, but it was clearly a park, and we just drove back through. It's where we saw the bear, And we found a flat spot and set up our tent, camped out, beautiful night, clearest sky I've ever seen. Next morning, we are a very long day's drive from the border into Maine, where we're going to come back through. So we start this long journey. Not long into that journey, we are not seeing vehicles. I mean, hours will go by without seeing any other vehicles. We are on a long, steep uphill when the person driving at the time says, "It's not working." What do you mean it's not working? The Suburban is not working. And sure enough, trying to drive it felt like the e-brake was stuck on. We're like, this is not good. So pull over, and we're talking about, like, what are we going to do? Well, we had a few cell phones. Not all of us had cell phones at that point in the world. The ones that we had certainly could not call in the middle of nowhere in way north Quebec. And even if they could, none of us had an international call plan like we might have now. So we're not calling anybody. We've not seen anybody for hours, and we're assuming we're not going to see anybody for hours again. So what are we going to do? Well, for anybody who is familiar with the kind of like late 90s, early 2000s zeitgeist of Lancaster County, you might be aware that it was pretty like evangelical, charismatic Christian. So it's probably not a surprise that one among us said, why don't we lay hands on it and pray for it? So we do. We get out, we stand around the Suburban, whether or not we believe this thing was going to work, lay hands on it, and we prayed for the Suburban. Started up, and it ran perfectly. Not only did it run perfectly, but it ran perfectly for years after that. Now, I'm sure we're all coming from, different like spiritualities and faith traditions and things like that. And I don't know to this day whether the prayer worked or whether it was just like a Nintendo 64, turn it off and back on. That's the way it fixes pretty much everything. But in any case, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that that was a real case of auto renewal.